Welcome back, friends and scoundrels, to Horror in the Hills. I'm Brant.
And I'm Lynn.
And this is Movie Book.
Book movie.
Book movie. Whatever.
Alphabetically, and books are always better.
Books are almost always better. Like 99.9 infinitesimally. That's a fun word to say. We're off to a great start tonight. We are in a new recording space, so hopefully this isn't too terrible. This is actually our first recording in this space. Maybe we should have tested it first.
Well, this will be an excellent test.
Anyways, this series is where Lynn reads a book of a horror movie, of a horror story, and I watch the movie of said horror story, and we see if we can have a conversation about it. It's not a comparison of one or the other, or one versus the other, whatever. It's not a comparison of the two medium. It's just to see how well they track.
Real brief history, because it's been a while. This came about because Bran likes to watch horror movies and wants to talk about them, but I won't watch them.
Most of the time.
So this is just...
I'm winning her over.
Not really.
Anyways. So it's our way of doing this as a couple.
Gross.
Hey, at least we're not James and Chelsea from Dead Meat, who are engaged and like to get scared together. Soon to be married. Congratulations, those two, by the way.
Run.
Anyways, today, as you're listening to this, whatever period of time it is for you in the future, we're following up Red Dragon with Silence of the Lambs, because we stopped right in the middle of that. Which, if you want an explanation of what happened there, go listen to the first of the series of quick shots that I haven't recorded yet, but will come out before this. Anyways, book first, right? Synopsis.
This book's old enough that it actually has it on the back rather than just other authors
Stephen
recommending
King recommends
it.
this.
Yes. FBI trainee Clarisse Starling is in search of a serial killer who bonds with his victims in unspeakable ways. There is only one way to find him, by unlocking the secrets of another man who also killed mercilessly. Dr. Hannibal Lecter, confined to a state hospital for the criminally insane, is charming, brilliant, and seductive. He's willing to give Clarisse what she needs if Clarisse gives him what he wants. In the unfathomable corners of a madman's mind, the truth is waiting, and only in that darkness will Clarisse discover how much innocence she's yet to shed. And Stephen King did not comment on this one. Clive Barker did. Thrillers don't come any better than this.
All right. So now for the movie synopsis, as portrayed on Fandango.com. Jodie Foster stars as Clarisse Starling, a top student at the FBI's training academy. Jack Crawford wants Clarisse to interview Dr. Hannibal Lecter, a brilliant psychiatrist who is also a violent psychopath, serving life behind bars for various acts of murder and cannibalism. Crawford believes that Lecter may have insight into a case and that Starling, as an attractive young woman, may be just the bait to draw him out.
I'm not sure if he actually thinks that, because she's kind of just going there to fill out a survey and it doesn't have anything to do with the case to start. She's just doing grunt work because everybody's busy.
Well, I guess we're getting into it.
I guess.
I don't know, because Hannibal calls out her attractiveness. Oh, look at you, Jack Crawford, sending you in, an attractive young woman. Or, no. I think I'm wrong. I think it's Crawford. Not Crawford. Fucking pig face. Chilton. No, I think Chilton calls it out. Sending her in, an attractive young woman. I don't even think he's seen a woman in 8 years. Yes. That is the accuracy.
But no, because she's just being sent there to fill out a psychological profile, and the beautiful woman part is just happenstance, and it just continues to connect to the case because Lecter made comments on it. Asked if he started scalping yet, and then one of the victims is scalped. So that connects him to it.
Those are other movies that I made notes on.
And something about the flute player's car that brings in a connection because
that's not relevant to the movie at all.
The flute player's car?
Mm-hmm.
With the head with the moth in it? In the back of it?
Benjamin Raspel?
Yeah.
Oh. It doesn't get into him playing flute. So
I couldn't remember his name, but he's the flute player.
You said flute player, and I thought it was a reference to Hannibal's last kill from Red Dragon.
Right, that's the start of this one. That is what I'm talking about. That is Raspel.
Oh.
And
so in the book, Raspel is Hannibal's victim, not Bill's.
Right. But the head in the back of the car.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I think I'm on board now. He has the flautist car, right?
No, the flautist car is in lockup.
Yes. That would be Hannibal's possession still because...
No, it was Raspel's possession still. Raspel just tells her to go look in it. And in the back of the car is the sailor's head. Because Bill and Raspel knew each other.
Yes, they were lovers.
Yes.
And Bill kills Benjamin.
Who's Benjamin?
Benjamin Raspel.
The flute player.
We just did this dance. And that's his first kill. I got lost because you said flutist, and that was the last kill that Hannibal made before Will Graham caught him.
Right, so because Hannibal does kill Raspel the flutist. Bill kills Klaus, the Swede.
Okay.
The sailor.
Well, this is a confused mess already. So there was some mashing up of parts here.
Yes. Alright. So we've cleared it up. Bill kills Klaus, who's in the back of Raspel's car. Raspel is his lover. But Bill doesn't kill Raspel. Hannibal does. Because he's whiny.
Okay. So, let me give you the movie version of things. Raspel and James Gumb, a.k.a. Buffalo Bill, are lovers. Benjamin is a patient of Hannibal's, which probably Pan's tracks.
Yes.
And he recommends Jane to see Hannibal. And it doesn't go very far or very well. And then Benjamin just stops showing up because Bill killed him. And Hannibal finds his body and keeps the head for some reason. I forget the exact details, but they're not really important. So, this is off to a great start already, which is funny because I thought this was one of the better movie adaptations. Not just of this series, I mean, just in general. One of the better movie adaptations.
Because Hannibal never actually meets James. Raspel talks about him in therapy sessions. That's why Hannibal knows who Buffalo Bill is from the very beginning. But Hannibal does kill Raspel because he's annoying and he's tired of listening to him whine.
Makes sense. That would be in his
wheelhouse. Yeah. Because that's how he knows about Klaus, too, because Benjamin talks about it in therapy.
Does he bring up being afraid of James in therapy? Because that's why he recommends James go, is because he starts being afraid and he thinks that the therapy will help him.
I don't think he's afraid of him because he likes the bad boys. He's not afraid of him until after they're not together and he finds him with Klaus at the beach house and kills Klaus.
Anyways, where were we starting off at?
I don't know. Apparently right here.
Right. So, I really don't have a lot of... I mean, I kind of do. But I don't have a lot of notes like I normally do. But the notes I do have, I think, are going to be conversations.
Alright, well, let's converse. That's what the point is.
So, back to the beginning, where the questionnaire... I think that was just a ruse to see if maybe Hannibal would be receptive to her.
I do think
but
that's...
I think I don't know. Yeah. See if Hannibal would be receptive to her, but I think there's a little bit of a lead in with the questionnaire into Buffalo Bill. Is a theory of mine at any rate.
I think that might be possible because they know he's not going to answer the questionnaire, but it's one of those you gotta try because they're building a psychological profile from all the people they have incarcerated to make it easier to catch other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they need Lecter.
Which, I think it's ruse right from the start, just because they know he's not going to, and it's a waste of time. That they might actually be doing the psychological profile, but Hannibal would be an absolute waste of time because they know he's just going to toy with them and not do it.
It's a big gamble, though, pulling a student out. They don't have other female officers.
Well,
because, I mean, it makes sense if it's grunt work. That's why they're sending her.
But, Clarisse stands out a little bit, though. Not just because she's, the main protagonist, but because of her capabilities and abilities. Like why Crawford went to Will Graham for Red Dragon. And there might, maybe not quite to the same level, but Clarisse has her own capabilities that help her stand out. And Jack sees it and wants her for that reason. I don't even think it's necessarily an attractive young woman thing. You're locked up for that long and haven't seen a woman in years.
Yeah. Because, she talks about how she feels like Jack forgot her because he was at the recruiting at the school she was at, and then she wrote him a letter when she got accepted at the academy, and he just ignored it. So, I don't know. But she is top of her class, and the gun instructor has the hots for her.
Well, do you want to get into some of that then? Because it's hard for me to talk about these things without addressing. Because this is some of the notes that I actually have.
Yeah, let's get into
So let's get into Crawford. So you made an interesting comment about Crawford, about how this is Crawford's story.
Yeah, I felt like, honestly, both of them kind of, the first one was Graham and introducing Crawford, and this one was a lot of Crawford's story. Because it has a lot of, although they don't actually interact with each other, it has a lot of the interactions between Hannibal and Crawford, although they don't actually see each other.
So, from before?
Yes, it's,
between Graham and this, or?
It's, Hannibal talks about, Crawford and their, whatever it is.
Bullishness?
Yeah, whatever it is between them. And he sends little notes to Crawford about his sick wife and...
Their rivalry?
Yes, their rivalry. As it were. Because a lot of this has just little things about Crawford and his tenacity and just little things about him, like the way he cares for his sick wife that don't necessarily have...
anything to do with the story itself?
Yes.
Which is probably why a lot of that stuff's left out of the movie.
Yes, it's just all about the Crawford character and how he is, why he is the way he is.
Crawford is, in the movie, much less. Much less. He's only in exactly where he needs to be.
It kind of, because of the way he pushes himself and the way he deals with his personal life and work life, I think it kind of tries to explain why he pushes Graham and Clarisse the way he does, because he asks that of himself.
Brings me to my first note.
All right.
So I found Crawford much less horrible in Silence of the Lambs. Now, mind you, different directors filmed at completely different times, so that might explain some of it, but it just... within the context of the movie, I put it more as maybe it's due to a few more years of life, or because Clarisse is a more willing participant, because of how we talked about from Red Dragon, his manipulation of Will.
Yes, he's definitely a handler.
And how just really disgusting it was.
Yes.
Preying on Will the way that he did, whereas, like I said, Clarisse is much more willing participant because she's trying to get into the FBI, as opposed to being retired from the FBI.
I think it kind of makes it like an other side of the coin, because yes, she is much more willing, and in a way, kind of from Crawford's perspective, he kind of hates it a little bit, because he's watching her lose her innocence, because she's starting with it. And he's allowing that to happen and creating an avenue for it to happen.
But back on his manipulation, I found it a lot more tactical in this, rather than just... I don't even know how to explain it for Will. Because it's...
He was a handler. That is the best way to explain it. He's essentially like a handler or like an animal trainer. He uses treats or the whip or whatever it takes to make him perform the way he wants him to.
Yes.
Manipulation, honestly, isn't a word I would use at all for this Crawford.
Well,
it's because he's like a beaten old man. He's close to retirement. His wife is dying, and he stays up all night with her, even though she's a vegetable. And he's still pushing after Bill, and he's just so tired. And you can feel it.
I suppose. But it's like the manipulation is like using Clarisse for the survey and asking her certain questions. Or it's kind of like teaching, but there's also a manipulation to it. Like I didn't know anything real specific with it. I should have, so shame on me. And it's been a few days since I watched the movie, so
I didn't note any of it as manipulation. Maybe it's because you said it's teaching. It's coming from that teaching standpoint. He's asking
a little bit
why this, and
but it's engaging her curiosity, so that way she will seek the answers herself. But it's putting her into that position, and there is a knowing behind it that that's going to be the result. That's why it's the manipulation. And manipulation doesn't have to be a bad thing, which might be kind of the barrier there for you, because it's just pushing her in a way to get the results that he wants.
Well, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe there is a little bit, because sometimes he originally denies her when she says she wants to go do something or follow up on something, and then he'll change his mind and say, just have it done by this time, on my desk by 9, make sure you're in class, do it on your own time. This kind of thing. Giving her deadlines and denying her at first, or making her even wait for a response. All things to
get her worked up.
Yes.
And yeah, because I didn't see any of that. Like that none of that stuff was present, so I'm not able to comment there. God, what? I'm trying to think of.
Because like when she would try and contact him, he would never answer right away. There would be long waits before she got answers to, can I follow up on this? Can I do this? You know, that kind of thing. And when more information, there was one point where more information came in and it was on the news, and she thought because she was being so involved, she was going too. And she got to his office and he had already left, and she got left behind. And she got really angry about that. Because he's trying to teach her to control that.
Impulse control?
Yes.
Like with the pup?
Yes.
Because there was something with the funeral scene. The funeral home scene. That kind of triggered it a little bit too, but I don't remember specifically what it was about it. But trying to think of it did come on, like, because he kind of puts her on the spot there. And there's a little bit of manipulation in that, and seeing how she's going to handle it.
See, I thought he was manipulating the system there, because she got caught looking bad on television and making the FBI look bad. So by making her be there to do the prints on the waterlogged body, it was a punishment for her. I'm using air quotes like they do.
Well, I'm talking more specifically when he's pulls the sheriff off and he makes the comment about these kinds of cases, and he can be hard because she's a female.
Oh, when he gets the sheriff...
The sexist aspect of it.
When he uses it to get the sheriff alone.
Yeah.
Because he uses it to manipulate the sheriff.
Although, he doesn't... In Clarisse's case, he wasn't thinking about it that way. He was just...
Because he says, let's talk about this away from the delicate sensibilities of women and whatnot, to get the sheriff alone, to get the room cleared out. And they talked about it afterwards, and...
She pointed out that it matters.
Yeah, that it matters.
Because now everybody else is looking down on her.
Yes. Like it didn't even occur to him.
Which, I'm going to backtrack on my statement there. Because I wasn't necessarily trying to say it as a means of defending Crawford in that situation. It was still a big mistake on his part. But, with that... God, notes are so nasty. He does own his mistake in that moment, which does show a more wizened Crawford.
Because he's teaching her, because he mentions it several times, to freeze any emotions and feelings about things, to keep her eye on the prize, so you can see past it to the prize.
Yeah.
In reference to Chilton and the disgusting way he talks to her, down to her too. Like she's angry at Chilton and wants revenge on him, but she needs to lock that away. And I think...
To compartmentalize?
Yes. Because after that point is when he starts kind of delaying getting back to her on things and all this stuff, trying to teach her the importance of that so that she's not responding emotionally to things.
Interesting, because Jason Stapleton was just talking about this on his podcast about, real world things, how we want to react, we want to have an opinion on things, even though the vast majority of us don't know a single thing about anything we want to have an opinion on.
In response to that, may I quote something at you?
Sure.
Crawford, ever wary of desire, knew how badly he wanted to be wise. He knew that a middle-aged man can be so desperate for wisdom he may try to make some up, and how deadly that can be to a youngster who believes him. I do think Crawford's just trying to teach her. He feels much less manipulative in this.
Yes, and that's the point I wanted to make. Ultimately, I didn't bring the receipts to back it up, so that there is still that level of Crawford manipulation. But I mean, being in that job, you kind of have to have that all the time, no matter what.
Yes.
It seemed a lot less gross in this one. In this story than it did with Will, because Will didn't want to be involved anymore. He's like, all right, I'm going to come in and do this bit. I'm going to help you get on the right path. And then Crawford just keeps pushing and pushing and pushing.
Yeah, I didn't like him in the first one, but I pity him in this one. I feel sorry for him.
And this was the other thing that stood out with me about it, is that he does still have a tendency of putting people in the line of fire who don't necessarily want to be there. Because, Starling is in the behavioral side of the FBI.
Yes.
Which would be an office setting and trying to understand other people's observations and put the pieces together. Wouldn't necessarily be in the field.
She does have a strong forensics, though. She studied with Dr. Bloom. Not Bloom.
But it just...
He's the psychiatrist.
As far
the
as
other one.
Her job in the FBI, she wouldn't be in the field. Because she would be in an office somewhere studying information, trying to put pieces together. But Crawford manipulates her into being in that. And it's kind of incidental, too.
I think because he sees that she might be a waste there, because she's best on the range, and she's,
Plus, how much do you really get from another person's perspective? Because it's not a perfect world where these people are going to be absolutely objective. They're just going to record facts. They're going to have their own twist on it.
Maybe he just thinks there needs to be more women, because they do get on the women thing quite a bit. Maybe that's why Lecter's more open to talk to her. She gets more respect at the funeral home because the victim is a woman, and she uses that to get them to stop treating her in this boys club way. She says, She starts referring to her, and, let's get a look at her, and, I forget exactly what she says, but she makes a relationship between herself and the victim because they're both women. That it's more respectful for the victim that she's doing this.
The representation kind of
yes, and then
concept there.
When she goes back to the first one that Bill killed, and Crawford says, we've been over it, and the longer they sit, the less information we're going to get. And she says, I want to look at the room anyway because I'm a woman and she's a woman, so there's something you as a man might have missed.
And then she finds a jewelry box.
That's at the senator's daughter's one, but yes. She finds figures out that he's making clothes out of them at the first ones.
Yes.
Because she's also a seamstress. And she matched up the sewing darts and the patterns.
Which, that doesn't even necessarily have to do anything with being a woman. That
no, but my point was that they bring it up a lot.
Because...
that maybe that's part of the reason
the boys, the locker room talk, I would assume, is what you're on about with the boys club comment, isn't present. I think that's illustrated best in the movie when she takes control of the scene after being embarrassed.
Well, no, it's not locker room talk. Boys club, I meant because they're treating her like she's less than. Kind of ignoring her. Because women.
Ignoring Clarisse?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you meant, like, making comments about the dead girl.
No, like boys club. Like, boys only. We're going to pretend you're not here.
See, and, like, some of that plays into how Crawford handles getting the sheriff loan. Because he could have just been like, hey, there's some details that I need to get from you, that I need to share with you, that, we can't discuss in front of other people.
I guess I was wrong and I forgot about this. I guess there is some locker room talk. I'd put her on like a Mark V gas mask.
Is that in reference to Clarisse? Or...
yeah.
Okay. I thought you were talking about the victim.
No.
Because Thomas Harris is better than that, but a lot of other horror movies in general will do disgusting shit like that. But...
no, because she says, you officers are gentlemen. Now let me take care of her. There's things we need to do for her. You brought her this far. Now please go on and get out and let me take care of her. To bring it back to that more respectful state where they realize what they've been doing. Kind of puts the shame on them.
Because you don't get any of that. Like, Crawford makes the comment about these kinds of situations and indicates Clarisse, and everybody sees that. So she's like in the middle of the room with all these male cops around her who are staring at her, and most of them, based on facial expressions, are just, it's a judgment, but it's not sexualized or anything.
Yeah.
It's just oh yeah, you're just, there's an implication of her being a woman with it, but I think it's more like you're a junior person, so you don't know anything in this instance, and the way I perceived it in the moment. There are a couple guys that are given that kind of look.
Yeah.
But you are obviously not going to get into a monologue. But then it cuts to in the room where they're doing the autopsy, or not autopsy, but the forensic work on the body.
Yes. And
a lot of the cops are just standing around, and she's just initiates charge and pretty much quotes from them as the same from the book.
Turns on her southern hospitality too, because they are in Alabama. Because she tries throughout the book to hide her southernness.
But she's takes control of the situation, and Crawford notices it and kind of lets her. And I think that's important because she's earning that respect back, kind of. And it's not as directed as her relationship to the victim. It's just her relationship to these people and taking charge of the situation.
Because I actually like the quote for after Crawford saw that. And Crawford saw that the atmosphere had changed here in the presence of the dead, that wherever this victim came from, whoever she was, the river had carried her into the country, and while she lay helpless in this room, Clarisse Starling had a special relationship to her. Crawford saw that in this place, Starling was heir to the granny women, to the wise women, to the herb healers, to the stalwart country women, who have always done the needful, who kept watch, and when the watch is over, wash and dress the country dead. I liked that bit.
Yeah. So you want to talk about Starling?
Talk about what?
Starling.
I guess.
Because the things that stood out to me, in regards to her, use my big smarty pants words because I'm wearing my glasses. I found her really adaptable to her situations and resourceful, which are characteristics that are important to me as a person. But how she's, in regards to Chilton and the way he's talking to her, and when she's like, all right, maybe I should continue on here by myself.
Yeah.
How it's clear she just wants to get away from him because he's a fucking pig.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of reads it that way, and he gets offended. But then she turns around, no. I wanted your company, but it's just, if he sees you as a rival, it's not smart for you to join me.
She does try to use the charisma quite well on the people there like that.
And she's not afraid to take advantage of her happenstance as a woman. That she's very much aware that she's a woman and that she's able to, in certain situations, use that to either bring the tension down or redirect things, or...
She kind of kicked herself a little bit for it, because in the book she says, would it have killed me to flirt with him a little bit?
With Chilton?
Yeah. I like her tenacity and dedication to it, that she puts her career on the line to try and help save these girls, even though the senator treats her like shit. She risks getting recycled out of the system, out of Quantico,
mm-hmm.
getting recycled to keep pushing through because their lives are more important, especially on something that Crawford said probably wouldn't turn anything up because she's going to look at the oldest the oldest victim's house.
Yeah.
Because she got the idea from Hannibal that we covet what we see. So the first victim was probably close. And that's why the body was weighted and found later. So he set up the random pattern.
Yeah.
So it looks random, even though she was actually dumped nearby. So she might have been impulse of the moment.
A little bit. Impulsive kill. Establishing his MO. As Poughkeepsie Tapes kind of explores that idea with its serial killer. That serial killer changes to get the police off his trail.
Because she was the first one and he didn't have the MO yet, because that's why he weighted her body so it sunk, so he could set up this random pickup, random drop thing, so that when they found her body, they would think it was random.
Yeah.
Pick up, random drop.
Or at least it appears that way. Yes. I mean, that's what the story gives us as information for it, but realistically you wouldn't know. It could have been an impulsive, I need to get rid of the body. How am I going to do it? I'll do it this way.
Could have been.
But, no, her resourcefulness, like when she's at the storage shed and she can't get the door open, she goes and gets a car jack. Just her quick thinking, like other situations like with Chilton. She displays a lot with Hannibal. Her ability to keep up with him. And once the ice is truly broken and all pretense is dropped between them.
Yeah.
Which I think really, that moment really happens when Hannibal makes the comment about if she thinks about whether or not Crawford wants to fuck her. So it's after she finds the head.
Yeah.
As I know it. she, like, immediately after she's in the storage unit, she goes back and talks to him, Hannibal, and he's doing his psychobabble probing stuff, and he's talking, is there a relationship between you and Crawford? Not, and, not phrasing it that way. He's, toying with her in his way. But, do you think about him? Do you think he thinks about you? Thinks about fucking you? And he says it to be gross at her in that way, to, like, try to push her, like, to keep her at an arm's length or whatnot.
Yeah.
And trying to be intentionally disgusting. And she, no, I don't think about it. And, that seems like something that Megs would say. So she's calling him on his bullshit. And that's the moment where I think all the pretense drops between them, and Hannibal's like, okay, this isn't just some little toy that I can play with. She can actually keep up with him a little bit. Got anything on that?
No, I agree. I think that might be it. And when they started the quid pro quo.
Well, because he's already kind of doing it before, but not in the same way. That's what that psychobabble probing was.
Yeah.
Where he's just toying with her at first. But, her strong emotional constitution and maintaining her composure in those tough situations, like Chilton, the funeral home.
Does
a lot of the shit that Hannibal says to her in the beginning. Like, when they first meet and, they're being somewhat courteous, and then she brings it in too soon.
Yeah, she brings it in too soon. And he tells her so.
And then he flips, and he starts being mean to her. Pointing out how she's hiding her accent, how she's a rube who's trying not to look like a rube, and daddy issues, and such forthness. And then her perceptiveness, too. She's almost got a Sherlock Holmes level of observational skills.
She is very perceptive. I do like that about her.
Because it's the little things she notices in Jack's office, and, like, picking up on Crawford's manipulations of her, and just kind of like, okay, I see what you're doing, but I'm here for it, which might play into her being a more willing participant, because she sees the opportunity here.
See, he didn't flip on her in the book. He schooled her. Never use wit as a segue. It's ham-handed.
Well, it's not that. It's the comments that come afterwards, when he's, your cheap perfume, your cheap shoes, but you're wearing a nice coat, hiding your accent, like, picking at the specific things.
The necklace I had to look up. The Ada beads. Points out that she hates to be common.
Yeah. When he starts picking at those little things that he knows are gonna push at her buttons. But, like, in that moment, too, she feels the emotion, but she doesn't let it overtake her. And then she's able to kind of regain enough of her composure to be like, look, you're a dick, and I guess I'm gonna leave now.
Yeah, because that's when she traded feeling frightened for feeling cheap, and of the two, she'd rather be frightened.
Speaking of which, had Megs not done his business, pun intended, how do you think things would have played out?
I think he still would have called her back. That was just an opportune moment. He still would have called her back because it's entertainment for him. And he's bored.
And he does need it. That's why, after he convinces Megs to kill himself, he doesn't care that he doesn't have any of his stuff. And with the TV evangelical pastor crap.
Yep.
I forget what he calls it.
I forget too.
But begins with a P.
I don't know.
Anyways, they've got the TV there. It's got a pastor on it, and they crank it up really loud, so that way it's annoying to him. But he doesn't care because he had his fun, and it was worth it.
He was sitting there quietly thinking to himself, "Totes worth it."
Yep.
10 out of 10 would do again.
Yes. Is Barney much of a character in the book?
Yep.
Because I fucking love Barney.
I love Barney
He is
too.
one of my favorite characters throughout the whole series. He's just such a good dude, which is, for anybody who's seen Rob Zombie's Halloween, why I hate that Michael... Like, I kind of get it, because Michael's supposed to be just this evil bad guy, but it bothers me so much that he kills... Miguel? I forget. Fuck.
I don't know.
Why can't I think of the actor's name?
I don't know, you're barking up the wrong tree.
The guy who plays Machete.
Still barking up the wrong tree.
Oh my gosh. Danny Trejo. Danny Trejo's character. Because Danny Trejo is Barney in Michael Myers' world. He treats him right. He does all the right things. He respects him. He's never rude.
Like, Hannibal even says, "Thank you, Barney," when he's being transferred out.
Yeah. That's a conversation for that story. The next one.
It was in this one.
No. What I was going to say.
Oh.
No spoilers.
He would totes definitely kill Barney, though, if he needed to.
Means to an end, probably. But I don't...
Because...
If he had absolutely no choice, yes.
For the fun of it, probably not, no. But if he needed to, he would. And I think he demonstrates that in the end when he kills those 2 guards to escape from where he's being held when he gets transferred for the senator. Because one of those guards is nice to him, too.
Yeah.
But he kills him anyway. Because he needs his face.
Yeah, I was going to say, that, which one is it, though? Because...
The one whose face he takes.
So that could be a sign of respect for him. Like, yes, I had to kill you, but it wasn't just because.
Yeah, because he's polite and uses manners and doesn't call him names like the other guard does, and still gets his face cut off.
Because there's the one guard he beats the crap out of.
Yep.
With the nightstick.
That's the other one.
Is that the rude one?
Yeah.
And then makes a display of him. Hangs him up on from the rafters or whatever.
He didn't do that.
No. I couldn't remember if he did in the book or not.
Ain't nobody got time for that. He's got to cut off a face and hide the body in the elevator and shoot 2 gunshots to draw attention. Ain't nobody got time to do art. Something I noticed in this one is in Red Dragon, it was much more about the killer, equally as much about the killer as it was about Graham and Crawford. Maybe not Crawford so much, but Graham. They got Dollarhide's point of view much more often than you get Billy's point of view in this. Much more often. You don't really hardly get into him at all.
Well, let's bounce back a little bit then in my notes. Not that you would know that. So, what I took out of this as the main theme is what drives us. Or what drives people. So, like, I would say the 2 main characters are still Clarisse and Bill, even though he's not personally present in the story much. Because he's not that present in the movie either. Only enough to give you...
I think it's because there's no mild redemption to it. Because with Dollarhide, you can see him fighting against what he's doing and who he is because of Reba. There's no aspect of that for Jane.
These are also just as much character studies, these stories, as they are about the crimes that are being committed. And if you had focused this story more on Bill and what he's doing, it would essentially just be a slasher. Whereas not focusing on directly on him, but focusing on him through the lens of other people, and how, especially with Hannibal, since Hannibal kind of knew him.
Yeah.
You get the things of why he's doing what he's doing. Again, that what drives us. So Clarisse is driven partially by her father, why she went into criminal justice work.
Because he was the night watchman.
But also by her going to that farm and the saving of the lambs. Her trying to silence. Okay. In the movie, it's lambs.
No, the lambs die. The horse she saves. She runs away with the horse.
The horse isn't present at all.
The horse lives till the end of the book. Which is impressive for a dead horse. Since it was on a slaughter farm.
Right. But it's a sheep ranch, and it's spring slaughter time. So she grabs a lamb and tries to run, but she's not able to. So that sticks with her. Like the foundational elements are still the same. For that kind of, not really. Explains something that she tried to do that wasn't completed.
Right. Because it's a slaughter ranch, horses and pigs, sheep, all of it. She wakes up to the sound of the sheep screaming. Mm-hmm. And she still wakes up to the sound of them screaming now.
Yes.
And she never even got the chance to save them. She did save the horse. They ran away together. And ended up at the orphanage together. But she's trying to save the innocents to stop the screaming from waking her up every night.
Yes, I said the foundational elements
are the same. And Hannibal says she's going to have to keep saving because the lambs aren't going to stay silent. Essentially.
But it still, like, that's what her ultimate driving force is, trying to save. Even, again, with her own story earlier, even at the stakes to herself. Which isn't present in the movie, but
she has no personal stakes? Like there's no repercussions for her?
It doesn't get into it any.
Oh.
She is taking a challenge, but it doesn't focus on that hardly at all. It's just like a couple brief comments.
She's up on report. There's going to be an inquiry. She's risking getting recycled. The senator's aide is breathing down her neck because he's pissed at her.
But then Bill, James, is driven by the need to understand himself. Because that's really, he's trying to figure out who he is, what he is. And he keeps being denied the more peaceful paths.
Such as?
Getting an actual gender reassignment surgery and...
Because he's not trans.
I know... But that's not how he sees it. He thinks he is.
I know he thinks he is.
But because he was denied that, he's turned to killing. Which, that was there to begin with. He was always kind of there as a killer. And this is as like deep as it goes with the movie. Did the book get much into childhood or anything?
It kind of does. Like, I think it's a little bit Oedipal because before he kills them, he watches a video of his mom winning a beauty pageant. And he talks to Precious about, look, here she is. And he gets so excited every time his mom comes on. And there's a clip from a late night porno ad that he thinks is also his mom. That he puts on the tape too, and he watches that before he goes and does his murders. But it's always just those videos of his mom. And he gets so excited to see her, and she's so beautiful, and he practices being like her, walking like her, smiling like her. Do they not get into his mom?
No. Not in any meaningful meaningful way. It might be referenced, but I don't recall.
Because I forget, like, about his childhood, any of it, if it gets into it or any of it, because it really doesn't a lot, but I think it's more that he wants to be his mom than anything else.
As I believe it was Faculty of Horror talking about his name and the confusion of his name. Because it's not James, but it's also not Jamie. It's somewhere in between. And he's trying to pick an identity.
He has one. It's James. He gets really upset if you call him James. It was a typo on the birth certificate, but he refuses to admit that.
So, I mean, that holds a little bit of, adds a little bit of water to my bucket. That it's an identity thing, that he's just trying to understand himself, but because of whatever happened in his past. Like, I don't recall the book ever getting into it, but it's been so long since I've read it that
I don't think it gets into anything other than
been about 20 years.
His mom and this video he watches over and over and over again.
Since we're here, do we want to get into this part of the conversation?
If we must.
Because this part of the conversation is probably going to piss people off, but I don't care. We're doing it anyways. Because part of having this conversation with Bill is defining what makes a person trans. And is it simply the will to be the opposite gender? Or is it an actual, I feel that I was born in the wrong body? Or to simplify that, is it a choice or is it something that just is? Because that really, really does define whether or not this character is trans. And by the standards at the time this was written, it's, there has to be an actual real feeling of body dysmorphia.
Well, there's a whole bunch of psychological tests they run. Yeah.
Which is like where the body dysmorphia and a bunch of other stuff comes in. Which is why he's denied the gender reassignment surgery, because for this instant, we'll just keep it within context of this story, even though that question in the real world is very important for the conversation that society's trying to have, but not willing to because people have just drawn their lines. Within the context of the story, he isn't, because he doesn't fit the profile, which is why he gets denied the gender reassignment surgery and everything. And there are statistics out there that point to many of these people just being confused about things and trying to figure it out, and they make a rash decision and end up regretting it later. Trans people do have one of the highest levels of suicide rates, if not the highest of all the different recognized groups. Statistical breakdowns, even after having surgery. And part of that is because the actual issues aren't being addressed. So, yeah, you have to define what it means to be trans to determine whether or not this character is trans. To determine the next point that I want to make, which is why I wanted to talk about this part of the story, is the representation. Because I will agree that it is bad representation. But not because it's a trans person killing, but because this isn't a trans person. And for a community that doesn't have a lot of representation on the screen, I understand the need to, or the drive to see yourself there and being upset at these situations. But if it's not true representation, reach out and find it elsewhere. Like Angel. Angel's a really good movie if you want good trans representation. And gay, and whatever other queerness.
But yeah, the book goes out of its way to make sure of the point that he's not trans, and all the doctors at the hospitals that do these gender reassignment surgeries say, you better not put in the paper that he is. We have a hard enough time as it is. These people have a hard enough time as it is. Don't make them out to be serial killers, because this man is not trans.
Yeah, But
I do think he is just confused, because he's also like the flautist. was his lover, right? Whatever his name is, Renee. But he also attacks and kills gay men just for being gay men.
Which the movie didn't get into at all.
Because he's gay and homophobic?
Well, wanting to deny that part of yourself for a person like Bill, they would seek to kill it in real life. Like, is it Omar Mateen?
Yeah.
The Florida nightclub shooter. That was a reason why he picked the club. Was because of his latent homosexual tendencies. But it wasn't the reason. It was just a part of it. Like slavery and the Civil War.
Yeah.
Man, we're just getting all kinds of controversial in this section. Anyways, no, like the movie does too. It makes the point not as strongly as the book does, saying that he isn't trans. This is said a couple of times at most. But it also goes to a decent length to point out that violent tendencies are extremely uncommon, if they even happen at all, within the trans community.
It does say that they are some of the most nonviolent. It goes on for several pages the first time it comes up, with Crawford talking to the doctor about it. They make sure they get it covered.
So it's not that the movie or the book is trying to say that trans people are bad. It's a person misunderstanding themselves and thinking that they're trans when they're not.
He just wants to be beautiful, like his mom.
Which, like, that makes me question the... Because, God, who was it? There's was it Scary Mysteries on YouTube, who sprinkles some salt with this, because his research isn't always the best. It's very mainstream information. He covers serial killers a lot, and one of them, I thought it was Ted Bundy, but I don't think it was. Might have been Jeffrey Dahmer. I don't know, it was somebody who ended up living with their grandparents.
Yeah.
For a long time, and they ended up being gay, but their guardian, no, Ted's mom had him out of wedlock, and he was sent to live with his grandparents. Sorry, trying to flesh this out still, but they were emotionally and mentally abused by their guardian, who would put them in dresses and treat them like a girl when they weren't, and it caused them to be confused when they were older, and it had, at the very least, some influence on their killing. Probably more so to the abuse itself than what the abuse was, but
I think it's he wants to see himself as beautiful, and he sees his mom in this video, and that's what he's chosen as beautiful, and he sees himself as ugly, and you can see it in the way he treats himself, where he uses like the handle of a mop to tuck himself back so he doesn't have to touch himself. And he likes to watch his victims. You know, he offers them showers so he can watch them wash their hair, because, you know, they're so pretty. And the last thing he says is to the moth, "How does it feel to be so beautiful?" right before he dies.
I don't know. I think the influence of Ed Gein mucks it up a little bit.
Of what?
Ed Gein. He, for whatever reason, is one of the most prolific killers. And I have very vaguely done some research on it. But I wonder if it was at a time... I wonder if the reason why is because it was at a time when TV was really starting to actually take off. So it was easier to get the information out to people, and he was maybe an early product of that or whatnot. But he considered very prolific amongst the killers, but he only killed like 1 or 2 people. And he would have gone on to kill more if he hadn't been caught. But like his biggest thing was that he digging up graves, usually women, and taking the flesh.
Well, what I find interesting is James is so different from Dollarhide, and I don't know much about other serial killers, but like Dollarhide kind of interacts with the police and he watches his own newspapers and everything, but James just doesn't. He is all focused on making his, what Hannibal calls, a breast vest.
Yeah. Well, which brings up my last question about James. Is he killing these people because he's just quote-unquote evil, or is it a means to an end?
I think for him it's a means to an end because he just sees them as material. And he talks about them that way. Even after the senator starts doing her news thing and constantly saying her name to try and humanize her, it doesn't work on him in the least.
Does he even see that, or...
It doesn't say if he sees it or not.
Which I would assume he's not. He doesn't care about that at all. Does it talk anything about his background? Like his room decor and stuff like that? His personal setting?
It just talks about the basement and how he used to have to feel like he had to do his basement activities, as he called them, hidden away, but he's become more and more comfortable just doing it wherever. But it just talks about his basement and the moth room, where he's got the moss growing and the setup in the bathroom for where he hoists the green material as he tans it. Because they're not bodies. They're green material. They're hides.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. There's a lot of allusion to a conservative kind of background. There's a lot of American flags in his rooms, and like even down in the basement.
He's got a gun.
Some Reagan-isms. Some swastikas, but I'm not sure if they're entirely tied to Nazism or...
No, I don't none of that was pointed out. It's just...
And like some of that might be because of the hatred of his latent homosexuality.
Yeah.
That...
The greatest impression you get from it is when Clarisse goes to this town. She interacts with it in the way she used to behave, the part of herself she tries to suppress, the poor southern part. And because that's the way she's interacting with it, that's how you're able to establish that this is a poor country town. Dirty, kind of white trashy, because that's how she interacts with it. And she allows herself to be the dirty, white trashy part of herself that she suppresses in that area. Because it makes people more open with her.
You suppose another one of the main themes is self-acceptance?
I think so. I think it's possible.
Because it's her going there and her accepting herself in a way, giving into that part of herself that helps her be successful in that situation.
Yes.
And then James trying to find that acceptance for himself as well. How deep does the book go into Clarisse's past?
It's talks about a few of her nightmares with the lambs that she wakes up from. And it talks about when she's channeling. Most of the time she feels like she's channeling her father and trying to be like him. And it wasn't until she's put in certain situations that she realizes she also got strength from her mother, the woman who kept them going as long as she could, up until that point where she, couldn't anymore. They talk about how she would go to work with her mother, and she remembered the crows stealing stuff from the motel, because her mother was a motel maid.
Mm-hmm.
And the crows would steal stuff from the cart. And it talks about that and how Clarisse could never get them to leave. They would just keep stealing things. And she has dreams about that. But she also remembers her mom stubbornly washing dishes and cooking and trying to keep her as long as she could. And it's that southern strength of her mom that she starts to use.
So, again, playing into the self-acceptance.
Yes. But it talks about her dad, the night watchman, and how he died because his shotgun didn't fire fast enough and he got shot first. Pulling it out of the truck because he wasn't a real police officer. He was a night watchman. Mm-hmm. And I think Hannibal kind of digs on the not a real officer thing and why being in the FBI is so important to her.
I was just asking out of curiosity because the movie only does a couple of flashbacks. One with her father coming home and her asking if he got any bad guys and whatever else. And then at the funeral home, a flashback to his funeral.
When the boss came and asked for his clock watch.
I don't remember.
Because that comes up a few times. Because as a night watchman, he's got these stops around town. He's got to make and plug the key in so it knows he's out working. And his boss came and asked for it back in the hospital.
Oof. No, it's his actual funeral, which I like the flashbacks in this because they're very natural to what's going on in the movie. Like, in real life, when you have your own internal flashbacks, like something that triggers them, mm-hmm. is, whatever's going on to you at the time. You relate back to that story in your own self to help you persevere or move on or whatever.
No, and I guess it talks about her time at the orphanage a little bit and the farm in Montana and the fact that she's got a picture of the horse on her wall still.
Yeah, because there are other things that come through, like her conversation with Hannibal and stuff, but it doesn't. It only gives you just enough for that, why she's a cop.
Oh, and her roommate at Quantico. When she comes back from the funeral and she's still got her southern accent and her roommate tells her not to talk like that because it'll make people around here judge her for it. She says, I don't talk like I'm from the ghetto anymore. You gotta lose the podunk. I think it's about... It reinforces that theme of changing who you are in order to fit in with what society wants you to be.
It does, and it creates this interesting, or illustrates, not creates because it's already there. It illustrates this parallel of the Black community and the South. And how for much of U.S. history, the Black community was othered and in a lot of ways still are, kind of. But we treat people from the South in a very similar way, especially in media and going into that representation thing. That's kind of what brought me around on the representation conversation, because if for a lot of people, movies and news and whatnot is their only representation of people. So it does inform that in their heads. And if it's all bad, like is often the case with Southern people from the South because of the state's war.
Yeah.
I lost it. That's how we're treated. But yet, part of the reason why we view the South so bad is because of racism. And we treat it as though they're the only people who were racist at the time. Yeah. Which, I'm going to throw in a recommendation. Read Renegade History of the United States by Thaddeus Russell. That's a very interesting book. And will help with some perspective on things.
Give you the thinky thoughts?
Oh, it was great. Especially I was reading at the same time. Well, I was listening to it as an audiobook At the same time as I was listening to Malcolm X's speeches, like I was bouncing back and forth, just not intentionally per se, but it just, the way things worked out, like listening to Malcolm X on the way home or for short drives at work, but then listening to unregistered history or renegade history, sorry, his um, online school is called unregistered, or no, his podcast is called Unregistered. Um, Listening to Renegade on like longer drives and stuff, but it was just those two dynamics and some of the stuff and how they kind of melded together a little bit.
Yeah.
But also how seeing how history is taught traditionally. That's a nice little tangent.
It is. But no, you mentioned what you thought the theme was earlier, and I definitely think my thought on the theme is I think it's societal expectations, both on her southernness and being a woman, because that comes into it too. The way she uses that and the way others view her. And then the same for James and who he thinks he is and who he's trying to be. The dichotomy of it.
Yeah.
Like, even as he's hunting Starling, he thinks, oh, I think I want to keep that hair. It's such a nice color. And he's thinking about how he can kill her without ruining her hair.
Interesting. Just as I said, these things are much better as books.
Because, like, those are his first thoughts. She's too skinny to use a skin. Not enough there to work with. But he likes her hair, so he's going to try and keep that.
So it's like with the terrain crafting. Pick up a piece of trash and how can I use this? The white.
But yes, it's kind of like that. That is his initial instincts. It's his thoughts. He's immediately breaking down if he can use her for parts or not.
Which really shows his mind frame and puts another dollop of water in the bucket for means to an end. Hannibal?
What about Hannibal?
I think, so in Red Dragon I talked about his childishness.
Yes.
And, I forget how exactly I worded it then. But I think it's more prominent here in this story.
Because he knows who James is the entire time?
I think he's just displayed better. What is it with P words today that I can't remember them?
I don't know.
But how his childish attitude and how he will instantly become very spiteful in a very childish way.
When he finds out that Clarisse lied about the room with the view.
Kinda.
But even
like the little things he does for his own amusement is mostly where I think it mostly comes from.
Because even in the end, like, he's mad at her for her lies, I think because of a sense of betrayal, maybe, because they had this thing going and she had to go and ruin it with her dirty, stinky lies. But still, when she shows up at where he's being held when he gets moved, he still gives her the file and helps her. Even though he's cranky about it. And then when he escapes, he still writes her a letter.
Petulance. That's the word.
He still writes her a letter. Says, you don't hunt me and I won't hunt you.
Yeah. It's a phone call in the movie, but semantics. See, that was one of my questions, though. Is, do you think Hannibal was onto the fake offer and let it play out, knowing Pigman, a.k.a. Chilton, would try to undermine it in some way? Giving him the chance to exploit it for her?
I think that, honestly, Clarisse should have known something was up, because the first 2 times she showed up Chilton just let her go down there and just stand there.
Mm-hmm.
But this last time, he had a desk for her so she could sit and do her work, where he had the recording device.
Hmm.
And I think she should have been suspicious of that.
Yeah, because that's not present in the film at all. The desk. Like, that scene still happens, but she's standing. And then magically he has a recording. But, I mean, I don't magically somehow too terribly bad, because it wouldn't surprise me that he would have it bugged in some way.
No, there's a desk present, and I think she should have been suspicious of that because he didn't offer her anything previously.
Is it that scene or is it later?
But
we'll have to pay attention to that when we watch it.
I definitely think it's something that Hannibal would have noticed, that no chair was offered before, but now suddenly there's a desk. And I think he's good enough at reading people that he would have known the offer was false. He even, picks it apart because of the island they picked and everything.
Yeah. Well,
I think he kind of...
And part of what... Well, I mean, it's just kind of a natural question that I thought of. But in the movie, when she's showing him the map of the island, or she's showing him a map of the island, it's the way she's holding it up.
Mm-hmm.
To, like, she's trying to conceal something from him. But then she puts it in the folder and gives it to him, so...
Yeah.
I think.
I think he does know, and I think he's using it as a chance to get a good read on her liar face. Like, base questions in a lie detector test. I think he's using it as a means to studying her when she's lying. For his own entertainment, future use, I don't know. But I do think he is aware that it's a lie. And that's why he still helps her when she shows up again, because he always knew it was a lie.
And that it wasn't necessarily her. Because she does add the Anthrax Island aspect of it.
Yeah.
That's her little touch. But... And my follow-up question on that. Or is he just clever enough to Jack Sparrow's way through it in real time? Because that's what he does. Kinda. But it probably a little bit of both. Like, oh, here's my opportunity. Let me see what all I can do to get out of here.
When you're smarter than everyone else in the room.
Because I think I think that's the one where Chilton confronts her before she comes in. He's like, you can't keep barging in here and seeing he's my patient. I have rights, and you just keep coming in unannounced. And it's a jealousy thing for him, because he wants what she's getting out of Hannibal.
Yeah, I think he tries to, let's share it, and she shuts him down, and that's why part of his deal with Hannibal is, I get all exclusives, and I can give you the real deal. What?
I'm just trying to figure out if that actually happened, or if you're making another internal reference to Let There Be Carnage.
No, that actually happened. That actually happened. Because Chilton, who is not a doctor, Hannibal likes to point that out, actually contacts the senator, which is something Crawford didn't do. So he actually gets a real deal, and he says he'll facilitate this actual deal if...
That's why I add in, if he knew Chilton would undermine what they were trying to do and muck it all up.
Well, you can always count on a power-hungry, ambitious man to be power-hungry and ambitious.
Mm-hmm. Oh. It's kind of like something, Art of Manliness.
Mm-hmm.
Had an episode about cowardice. And book naturally had the author on. And the author I didn't pay much attention to his name, but was talking about the spectrum of cowardice.
Yeah.
And that it's not just a linear spectrum, it's circular. I think I might be confusing that with the book. With Out of the Silent Planet. But I'm pretty sure, yeah, because it you have like the two aspects of being a coward, which is just outright cowardice, and then recklessness. And like down at the bottom of the circle is bravery, courage, and that in an effort to, and that's kind of where Chilton is. He's in his attempt to not appear cowardly, he does reckless things.
Yeah. It's so late.
Anything else? I think that's all I had.
Good, because I'm tired.
So, that brings us to, well, there was a good conversation here. Do we think that the movie and book lined up very well?
I think they lined up enough, but I think that there were some key things, some key differences, particularly to the character of James. Like, I mean, I don't know how you would get across that it was his mom he was trying to be like.
In the movie?
Yeah.
Much the same way you would in the book. Show him watching the video, talking to Precious, and then emulating her. But like that scene in the movie, he's just dancing.
Because I think that helps.
Like,
I think that helps visually demonstrate that he's not trans, like the doctors and the psychological tests show him to, is this fact that he's focusing it on his mom and what he considers beautiful and what he considers ugly. But I think other than that, it's close enough. I feel like we had a discussion. A discussion happened.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we still had really good discussions with The Shining and Red Dragon. But I did find this time that I had said the movie much less. Or at least I felt like I had.
Yeah.
Which maybe that could be an indicator, because it's hard to not say that. I don't like to, because it makes it feel like we're comparing the two.
Well, do you feel satisfied? Were you able to discuss everything you would have discussed with someone who had watched the movie with you? Because that's what this is you try to get me to sit down and watch these movies with you, but I don't want to watch the movie, so I'll read the book. Were you able to discuss everything you wanted to talk about from watching the movie?
Yeah, for the most part.
Then there you go. It's a pass.
Is that our new metric?
I mean, it makes sense. It's the reason we're doing it, that would be the metric. How about the fact that we just talked for 2 hours and 39 minutes? And you kept me up past my bedtime.
It's right at bedtime.
It's past my bedtime.
Anyways.
Yeah,
all the things. Not all the things. Thank you very much for listening.
You're welcome.
Hope this helped you find a different way to look at some of this stuff.
It didn't, but then I wasn't really paying attention to you.
Which, from our previous episodes to the newer stuff, you'll see a bit of a difference in the things that I'm talking about, because I've had a personal philosophy shift. Kind of. Much of my philosophies haven't changed, I've just, how I'm focusing on it has changed.
Are you a moth that has emerged from your chrysalis?
I am in my chrysalis at the moment, going through transformation. So, if you found this interesting and enjoyed it, share it with other people that you believe would also find it enjoyable. Even if they wouldn't find it enjoyable, and you think they just need to think about this stuff a little bit differently.
You can't make me listen to things.
I can make you talk about them, though. That is all. Signing off.